Hello, dear students. In yesterday's class, we have discussed regarding the etiology of cell injury and what is cell injury. And now in this class, we are going to study about pathogenesis of cell injury. Okay. In this pathogenesis, what are the topics we are covering are pathogenesis of hypoxic ischemic cell injury. In that it is divided into two types, that is reversible cell injury and irreversible cell injury, and pathogenesis of chemical injury and pathogenesis of injury by ionizing radiation. So all these are the topics we are going to discuss in today's class. Clear? Reference is Harsh Mohan, textbook of pathophysiology. Okay, from this you can get the more details. Next, coming to so what are the principles applied in studying the pathogenesis of cell injury? It depends mainly on three factors. The first thing is type, duration and severity of injurious agent. Whatever the etiological agent which is causing the injury, depending on its type and how long it's showing its effect and what is the severity of the injurious agent. In that example is small dose of chemical toxin. Chemical toxin means whatever it may be whatever the chemical or poison or something toxic material, or short duration of ischemia cause reversible cell injury. If it is if the dose is high and if it is for longer duration, then it causes persistent cell injury. That means there will be cell death. That is irreversible cell injury. So depending on the type, duration, severity of the injurious agent, we can identify whether we can come to conclude that whether it is a reversible cell injury or irreversible cell injury. And next, coming to second principle, type, status and adaptability of the target cell. Previous it is regarding injurious agent. Now this is regarding the adaptability of the target cell. Type, status and adaptability of target cell. In this example, see, if there is any hypoxic injury, skeletal muscle can bear it for a longer duration of time. When coming to cardiac muscle, it is very sensitive. Cardiac muscle fibers are very sensitive. Even any toxic material or even any small injurious agent is attacking on it, within 20 to 30 minutes it causes persistent ischemia. That means cell death occurs rapidly in case of cardiac muscle fibers compared to the skeletal muscle fibers. So here I said the type, status and adaptability of the target cell. Clear? And third is underlying intracellular phenomena. What is intracellular phenomena happening in that particular target cell? Mitochondrial damage causing ATP depletion. As we know that ATP is produced in mitochondria by a process called glycolysis. So mitochondrial damage causing, if there is a mitochondrial damage, it causes decrease in the ATP, a decrease in the production of ATP. If there is ATP, the cells can repair or healing can takes place. If there is no ATP, energy will not be generated. Clear? Next, second is cell membrane damage disturbing the metabolic and transmembrane exchanges. If there is a damage to the cell membrane, what does it do? It disturbs the metabolic and transmembrane exchange. That means exchange of ions, exchange of minerals, everything will be affected if cell membrane is damaged. And next, release of toxic free radicals. And a few cells, they also causes, once the cell gets damaged, it causes a release of free radicals. As we know that free radicals are highly reactive. They interact with the cells and will damage the cells. So this is about underlying intracellular phenomena. And the other thing, fourth one is morphological consequences. Morphology means structural changes. Morphological consequences. Morphology means structure. Example, the morphological changes of reversible cell injury is seen as hydropic swelling. In case of reversible cell injury, the cell gets swelled because of this injury, and which appears earlier than and whereas in case of persistent injury, that means in irreversible cell injury, there will be cell death. Where in case of reversible cell injury, it will be seen as hydropic swelling. Clear? So these are the principles. What are they? The first is type, duration and severity of the injurious agent. Second is type, status and adaptability of target cell. Third is underlying intracellular phenomena. Fourth is morphological consequences. So all these are the principles by which we can differentiate whether it is reversible or irreversible cell injury. Clear? And of all the pathogenesis, ischemic and hypoxic injuries pathogenesis is very much important because it occurs most commonly compared to other reasons. This is the most commonly seen reason. So in that, reversible cell injury, if the ischemia or hypoxia is of short duration, the effects may be reversible and restoration of circulation will be taken place. If it is for short duration, as name itself indicates, it is reversible cell injury, so that it can be reversed to the normal. For that example is coronary artery occlusion, myocardial contractility, and so these are in these conditions. If the etiological agent is removed, again the cell restores to normal function. Clear? Decreased generation of cellular ATP. Damage by ischemia versus hypoxia from other causes. All living cells require continuous supply of oxygen to produce ATP, which is essential for its activities. That thing we all know. So ATP is the fuel. It helps for producing different kinds of activities. How is ATP is produced in our body? It is produced by two methods. In case of aerobic respiration, it occurs in mitochondria by oxidative phosphorylation. And in case of anaerobic respiration or in anaerobic respiration, glycolytic oxidation is done to maintain the continuous supply of ATP. In this only two ATP is released in case of anaerobic glycolytic oxidation. So this is how ATP is generated in normal cells. Clear? What does this ischemia do? Ischemia due to interruption in the blood supply, as well because of ischemia there will be interruption to blood supply, and then as a result there will be hypoxia. That is, if there is no proper blood supply, there won't be proper generation of oxygen also, to supply of oxygen to that part. From other causes limit the supply of oxygen to the cells. So because of this ischemia and hypoxia, it leads to decreased supply of oxygen to the cells. Thereby it causes decreased ATP generation from ADP. See, for aerobic respiration, it requires oxygen to undergo oxidative phosphorylation to produce ATP. If there is no oxygen, aerobic respiration will not be taken place. Instead of aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration will take place. But the ATP produced here is very much less. So this energy is not sufficient for the cell to show its actions. Clear? In ischemia, aerobic respiration as well as glucose availability are both compromised, resulting in more severe and faster effects of cell injury. Clear? Due to this ischemia, there is no proper supply of oxygen, there is no proper supply of glucose. It leads to fast effects of cell injury. It also causes accumulation of metabolic waste products in the cell. So within the cell, it also leads to accumulation of metabolic waste products within the cell. Thereby it leads to swelling of the cell. And then third is intracellular lactic acid acidosis or nuclear clumping. See, in case of anaerobic respiration, along with this ATP, lactic acid will be generated, right? So lactic acid, accumulation of lactic acid accumulation of lactic acid is known as lactic acidosis. So because of this lactic acidosis, there will be fall in the pH, resulting in clumping of chromatin. Within the nucleus, there is chromatin material. So when there is no, in case of hypoxia, there won't be oxygen. So aerobic respiration will not be taken place. Instead of aerobic, anaerobic will be done. In anaerobic respiration, lactic acid is a byproduct which is formed. So if it is continuously undergoing anaerobic respiration, there will be accumulation of lactic acid in the cells. So due to this accumulation of lactic acid, it's a condition called as lactic acidosis takes place. So because of this lactic acidosis, what does it happen? The pH will be reduced. As we know that acidic pH will be less than the 7. So thereby intracellular lactic acidosis takes place and results in clumping of the chromatin. That is called nuclear clumping. Clear? And third is damage to plasma membrane pumps. Plasma, what are the pumps present? Sodium, potassium pumps, sodium, calcium pumps. So these are the pumps present on the cell membrane. So normally, sodium, potassium ATPase is the operating at the plasma membrane allows. So this pump, what does it do? It will allow the transport of sodium out of the cell and diffusion of potassium into the cells, right? So, and because of this hypoxia, what will happen? There will be damage to mitochondria. So therefore, what will happen? Actually, the sodium has to go out of the cell and potassium has to enter into the cell. When this is stopped, everything will be these pumping will not take place. This results in intracellular accumulation of sodium and diffusion of potassium out of the cell, right? Actually, what sodium has to be sent outside, potassium has to enter in the normal cells through sodium potassium ATPase pump. So as because of this cellular membrane damage, what will happen, these pumps will fail to function. So instead of going out, sodium, what will happen, it gets accumulated in the cell itself, and this potassium, it will remain outside. So in this way, potassium will be diffused out and sodium gets accumulated into the cell. So the accumulation of sodium in the cells leads to increase in intracellular water to maintain osmotic conditions. So when the sodium is there, it will attract the water to enter into the cell. So that thereby what will happen, when there is more amount of sodium within the cell, it will causes the water to enter into the cell. Thereby there will be cell swelling, hydropic swelling. Why it is called hydropic swelling? The swelling occur due to entry of water. So it is called hydropic swelling. Clear? And the other pump is calcium pump. So membrane damage causes disturbance in the calcium to exchange across the cell membrane. Excessive of calcium moves into the cell. That means more amount of the calcium influx will be taken place, especially in the mitochondria, causing its swelling and deposition of phospholipid-rich amorphous densities. So it's an amorphous density, right? Calcium, when it gets accumulated, it also leads to swelling. In case of sodium potassium, failure of sodium potassium pump, because of accumulation of sodium within the cell, it causes it will drag the water into the cell. Thereby it will be there will be swelling due to accumulation of water. In case of failure of calcium pump, there will be accumulation of calcium as an amorphous form. And then reduced protein synthesis. So it also affects the once it also affects the protein synthesis. How does it affect? Dispersed ribosomes. As a result of continued hypoxia, actually on rough ER and smooth ER will be there. On rough ER, what will happen? They will be having ribosomes on the rough ER. So they are called rough endoplasmic reticulum. So in case of hypoxia, they will get dispersed. So thereby ribosomes are detached from the granular or rough endoplasmic reticulum, and polysomes are degraded, thus dispersing ribosomes in the cytoplasm. So ribosomes are responsible for the protein synthesis. So because of this hypoxia, from the rough ER, they get dispersed, thereby not undergoing protein synthesis. They are not doing protein synthesis and inactivating their function. Finally, what will happen? There will be decreased protein synthesis occurs in the Golgi apparatus also in the same manner. Clear? Once again, I'll repeat this. Reduced protein synthesis. In the cell structure, there will be rough endoplasmic reticulum and smooth endoplasmic reticulum. In rough endoplasmic reticulum, above this surface, there are ribosomes are attached. Due to hypoxia, these ribosomes gets dispersed from this or gets detached from this rough endoplasmic reticulum, and they are inactivated. So as they are inactivated, they cannot do protein synthesis. So thereby protein synthesis will be decreased even in the Golgi apparatus and also in the endoplasmic reticulum. So if there is no protein synthesis, cell does not get any energy to do its functions. Clear? So if you see that ischemia or hypoxia leads to decreased ATP generation. When there is decrease in the ATP generation, what does it do? It will cause the influx of calcium and it leads to reperfusion. In that, it leads to mitochondrium. In the calcium will be increased in the mitochondria and also it enters into the cytosol. So there will be increase in the calcium levels in the cytosol. So increased calcium, what does it do? It causes phospholipase activation. Phospholipase, that is an enzyme which damages the phospholipid membrane. So thereby loss of membrane phospholipid and lipid peroxide and lipid breakdown occurs, and it also causes activation of protease. Protease breaks down this protein membrane. So because of that, there will be cytoskeletal injury. Finally, there will be membrane damage. When there is membrane damage, it causes liberation of extracellular enzymes. So it causes release of certain enzymes. And when these enzymes are released, it causes nuclear changes. That means I said that nuclear clumping takes place, and next cell death may occur, and serum enzymes are elevated. Actually, these enzymes should be present within the cell. Because of cell injury, what will happen? These gets released into the circulation from due to the damage of cell membrane. And when there is decreased ATP generation, synthesis of membrane phospholipid will be decreased, and toxic oxygen radicals will be released. They causes lipid peroxidation and DNA damage. Oxygen free radicals are highly reactive, so they react with DNA and causes its damage, and also it causes peroxidation of the lipid, thereby causing the membrane damage. This is how this reversible injury takes place. Clear? So once again, I'll repeat. In pathogenesis, first thing is decreased generation of cellular ATP due to absence of oxygen. Oxidative aerobic respiration does not take place. Only anaerobic will be taken place. At that time, decrease in the production of ATP will be taken place. Clear? And the other is second is nuclear clumping or lactic acidosis. In anaerobic respiration, lactic acid will be released. As this process is continued, it causes continuous release of lactic acid into the cell, and it gets accumulated into the cell lactic acid and causes lactic acidosis. This lactic acid will react with the nuclear chromatin and forms nuclear clumps. That is nuclear clumping. Next, damage to plasma membrane pumps. Because of certain enzymes, phospholipase and protease enzymes, this causes the damage of plasma membrane. So what will happen? This sodium instead of getting out and potassium instead of getting in, what will happen? This sodium accumulates within the cell, and thereby it causes the water to get entered into the cell and causes hydrophic swelling. In case of failure of calcium pump, excess of calcium influx will be taken place, and it will be deposited within the cell, causing its swelling and deposition of amorphous phospholipid densities. And next, reduced protein synthesis. Because of hypoxia, these ribosomes will be dispersed and inactivated, so thereby there won't be protein synthesis. This is how it affects these cells. So once everything is lost, what will happen? It causes the damage of whole membrane damage will be taken place, and whatever the contents within the cell or there, they gets leaked into the systemic circulation. And how it is seen? See, SGOT, LDH, CPKMB, all these are these enzymes. In case of liver disease, we can see this SGOT elevated. Why it is elevated? When hepatic cells damage, SGOT is present within the hepatic cells. So in case of reversible cell injury, or in case of hepatic cell injury, these enzymes will be released, or so that they are elevated, their levels are elevated in the circulation. The same way, CPKMB are elevated in case of cardiac cell injury. In this is how the enzymes are elevated. And nuclear changes like pycnosis, karyolysis, karyorexis, I'll explain these terms in the later. Clear? And next, irreversible cell injury. See, I said that irreversible cell injury occurs when there is a irreversible cell injury. When does it occur? It occurs when the etiological agent is affecting it continuously for a long duration of time. Then irreversible cell injury occurs. Okay, leading to damage of the causing damage to structure and functioning of the cell, leading to its cell death. The stage at which this point of no return or irreversibility of cell injury is possible is called as irreversible cell injury. So two essential phenomena will be taken place to distinguish irreversible from reversible cell injury. The first is inability of the cell to reverse mitochondrial dysfunction on reperfusion or reoxygenation. Even on reperfusion or reoxygenation. Reperfusion means we are providing blood supply. In case of ischemia, there will not be proper blood supply. So reperfusion means if we find that there is an ischemia and we are again supplying the blood supply, then it is called as reperfusion or reoxygenation. In order to prevent or to avoid hypoxia, we are reoxygenating. That means you're providing oxygen externally, even though the cells may not respond. That condition we call it as irreversible cell injury. And disturbance in cell membrane function in general and in plasma membrane in particular. So even the plasma membrane and cell membrane also loses their ability to heal or repair. Thereby it leads to further reduction in ATP, thereby continued depletion of proteins, reduced intracellular pH, and leakage of lysosomal enzymes into the cytoplasm. So first is calcium influx. So due to calcium influx, there will be mitochondrial damage. Excess intracellular calcium collects in the mitochondria, disabling its function. In that flowchart, I said that activated phospholipases. What does it do? Phospholipases break down the lipid bilayer membrane. And apart from production of phospholipases, the cell loses its ability to produce new phospholipids or to replace the already damaged phospholipids, finally leading to due to reduced ATP. So all these causes a damage of cell membrane. Intracellular proteases. So proteases, what will they do? They will cause the damage of protein of the cytoskeletal structure. So thereby also the cell membrane is damaged. And activated endonucleases. Endonucleases causes nuclear damage. So what are the effects it causes in pycnosis? Pycnosis means condensation and clumping of nucleus, which become dark basophilic, And karyolexis means nuclear fragmentation into small bits dispersed into the cytoplasm. Karyolysis means dissolution of the nucleus. Karyolysis means dissolution of the nucleus. That means it gets diluted or mixed into that. Karyolexis means it getting breakdown, fragmentation, and gets dispersed into the cytoplasm. Pycnosis means condensation of the nuclear chromatid. And next, lysosomal hydrolytic enzymes. So lysosomal hydrolytic enzymes, what will they do? They causes the lysosomal damage. Thereby it causes cell death and phagocytosis. The lysosomal membranes are damaged and result in escape of lysosomal hydrolytic enzymes. These enzymes are activated due to lack of oxygen in the cell and acidic pH. So hypoxia and acidic pH activates these lysosomal enzymes. So once these are activated, they'll release enzymes like hydrolase, RNase, DNase, protease, glycosidase, phosphatase, lipase, amylase, cathepsin. All these enzymes, what will they do? They will cause the digestion of these proteins. Which activation bring about on enzymatic digestion of cellular components and hence cell death. The dead cell is eventually replaced by masses of phospholipids called myelin figures, which are either phagocytosed by macrophages. So the dead cells will be replaced with phospholipids called myelin figures, which are either phagocytosed by macrophages. So these myelin fibers again will be phagocytosed by macrophages. Now again we'll go to this flowchart. See, due to increase in the cytoplasmic calcium, it causes mitochondrial calcium influx. So it will increase thereby it causes damage of cell membrane, and it also causes increase in cytosolic calcium. So when there is increase in the calcium levels and also hypoxia, at that condition, what will you do? It will activates the certain enzymes like phospholipase and protease. So these enzymes will cause a breakdown of membrane, lipid breakdown or membrane phospholipid breakdown, cytoskeletal injury. All of it causes membrane damage. And also when there is ATP, decrease in ATP, hence decrease in the synthesis of membrane phospholipids. Because of this also, it is not replaced. Whatever the damaged phospholipids are not replaced. Also, it leads to membrane damage and toxic oxygen radicals. So when there is deperfusion, even we are supplying oxygen, it will be converted into free radicals and causes lipid peroxidation and DNA damage. So when there is membrane damage, everything will be released into the circulation from the cell. Thereby it causes nuclear changes, and whatever the debris is there, that will be replaced with myelin figures. And again, these myelin figures will be phagocytosed in by macrophages, and there will be increase in the levels of these enzymes. Okay, this is the pathogenesis of reversible and irreversible cell injury. So this is the diagram representing the organelles when they are having reversible cell injury and irreversible cell injury. As I said, in reversible cell injury, there will be swelling. In case of irreversible cell injury, the cell gets will be having swollen with vacuoles. That means it will be replaced by myelin figures. And these are the membranes. So these membranes will be damaged. Cell swelling takes place. These are the myelin figures. And here also myelin figures. Disruption of the cell membrane. Ribosomes. These are the dispersed ribosomes. These are lysine and dispersed ribosomes. lysosomes and or do autophagy, and swollen and ruptured. That means they're already broken down. Cytoskeleton will be normal like this. They gets they gets aggregated here. They gets disrupted. Nucleus, clumped chromatin will be seen, and here pycnosis, karyolysis, karyoexis will be seen. Clear? So depending upon the duration of ischemia or hypoxia and restoration of blood flow may result in following three different consequences. From ischemia to reversible injury. When the period of ischemia is for short duration, so when the ischemia is for short duration, we can do reperfusion. That means resupply of blood. So when this will be done in particular time, within the short duration of time, we can restore the function to its normal. Reversible, that is reversible cell injury. From ischemia to reperfusion injury. When ischemia is for longer duration, then rather than restoration of structure and function of the cell, reperfusion paradoxically deteriorates the already injured cell. This is termed ischemic reperfusion injury. See, as if we do it in within the time, it causes restoration of normal structure and function. But even after long duration, if we are providing reperfusion, it further worsens or it further damages the cell. From ischemia to irreversible injury. Much longer period of ischemia may produce irreversible cell injury during ischemia itself. Then so much time has elapsed that neither blood flow restoration is helpful nor reperfusion injury can develop. So blood flow cannot be restored, and also reperfusion if we do also there won't be any improvement. That we call it as irreversible injury. Clear? Next, mechanism of ischemic reperfusion injury. As I said, this is this. After longer duration of time, even if we supply blood, it deteriorates the injured cell. So how does it do? That mechanism will be studying here. That is ischemic reperfusion injury. It will be studied under three titles: calcium overload, generation of reactive oxygen radicals, that is superoxide, peroxide, hydroxyl radicals, subsequent inflammatory reaction. Calcium overload. Upon restoration of blood supply, that means again if we are providing blood supply, what will happen? This ischemic cell, that means the cell which is not having any supply of blood, it will be bathed by the blood which we are supplying externally. It has, so the whatever the blood we are supplying externally, it will be rich in calcium ions at a time when the ATP stores of the cells are low. At that time, the ischemic cells ATP levels are low, but whatever the blood supply we are providing to that ischemic cell, it is rich in calcium ions. This results in calcium overload on the already injured cells. See, in case of ischemia, what will happen? There will be excess calcium influx within the cell, right? So that is ischemic cell. Ischemic cell which is full of calcium, and whatever the blood supply we are providing, it is also rich in calcium and all. So it also causes accumulation of calcium. So therefore, what will you do? The calcium overload will be taken place on the injured cells, triggering the lipid peroxidation of the membrane. So when there is increased calcium, what will you do? It causes the further it triggers the lipid peroxidation of the membrane, causing the further membrane damage. The further damage of the membrane takes place. Next, free radicals are highly restricted to the cells since they have electron-free residue and thus bind to all molecules of the term. This is termed as oxidative stress. Free radicals may produce membrane damage by the following mechanism. As we already studied in the organic chemistry in the last year, we have studied that free radicals are highly reactive, right? Whatever the cell is there, they'll go and react with it. So that is, we call it as oxidative stress. Oxidative stress. And how does it affect you? It causes this, whatever the free radical it is there, it causes lipid peroxidation, protein oxidation, DNA damage, cytoskeletal damage, and further it causes cell death. Why these free radicals will be released? As already there will be presence of some kind of free radicals within the cell, and whatever the blood supply we are providing externally, it causes this increase in the oxidative free radicals. See how does it affect oxygen? It undergoes auto oxidation, that by itself it undergoes auto oxidation, converts to superoxide, and this in the presence of enzyme SOD, oxidase dismutase, superoxide dismutase, it converts to hydrogen peroxide. This in presence of catalase converts to hydroxyl radical. Hydroxyl radical will be converted into water. Again from water it undergoes radiolysis, And this is how this mechanism of generation of free radicals takes place by 4 electron step reduction of oxygen. This is how free radicals are generated. So once these free radicals generated, they'll react with cell membranes, constituents, and causes the membrane damage. And conditions with free radical injury. What are the conditions? Ischemic reperfusion injury, ionizing radiation by causing radiolysis of water. As I said that even water, when it undergoes in the presence of radiations, it undergoes radiolysis and converts to ionizing radiations. By causing radiolysis of water, they also releases free radicals. Chemical toxicity, hyperoxia. Hyperoxia means excess of oxygen. When excess of oxygen is supplied, instead of only part will be taken, the remaining will be converted into free radicals. Inflammatory damage and destruction of tumor cells, and next followed by subsequent inflammatory action. Ischemic reperfusion injury event is followed by inflammatory reaction. This process will be followed by inflammatory reaction. How? Incoming activated neutrophils utilize oxygen quickly and release a lot of oxygen free radicals. So whatever the neutrophils are there, they gets activated because of the oxygen supply. That how is this oxygen supply is done? By reperfusion. So it is associated with accumulation of precursors of ATP. That means it causes accumulation of ADP and pyruvate, which further build up generation of free radicals. So these also causes the buildup of free radicals, is ADP and pyruvate. Clear? Once again, I'll tell you. In subsequent inflammatory reaction, what will happen? Whatever the incoming activated neutrophils are there, they utilize the oxygen supply from the reperfusion what we are providing. Thereby, it causes release of oxygen free radicals. So ischemia is also associated with accumulation of precursors of ATP. So because of these ischemia, ATP will not be generated due to hypoxic condition, right? So it causes accumulation of precursors of ATP. That means ADP and pyruvate, which are not converted into ATP. They'll be accumulated. These causes further buildup of, that means further generation of free radicals. This is how it affects. See, calcium overload, ischemic reperfusion injury. No? First thing is calcium overload. So already there will be calcium, excess calcium. When it gets bathed with, when this cell is bathed with new blood supply, there also will be their calcium. So thereby calcium overload will be taking place. This calcium overload activates a certain enzymes like lipid peroxidases and all. Thereby causes membrane damage. Free radicals mediated cell injury. What are the free radicals related? Oxygen converts to by 4 methods. It will be connected to free radicals, or radiolysis of water also causes the liberation of free radicals. So whatever the free radicals are there, they are really highly reactive. They causes destruction of the cell membrane, and then and it is seen in these kind of conditions. And then subsequent inflammatory reaction, whatever the neutrophils are there, they gets activated and they'll get and utilizes oxygen supply and release a lot of oxygen free radicals. So ischemia is also associated with precursors of ATP like ADP and pyruvate, which also causes further buildup of free radicals. Clear? This is regarding ischemic reperfusion injury. Next, pathogenesis of chemical injury. So what are the chemicals? Chemicals are there. They causes direct cytotoxicity or by conversion of chemicals into reactive metabolites. So on metabolysis, they will be converted to active metabolites. Either they may cause a damage to cells, or the chemical directly it may cause cytotoxicity. Some chemicals combine with components of the cell and produce direct cytotoxicity without requiring metabolic activation. That means, example, mercury chloride. If we take mercury chloride, it directly reacts with the cell and causes the cell injury. Clear? It does not require any further processing or further conversion into active metabolites. Directly it will affect. The other is conversion into reactive toxic metabolites. This involves metabolic activation to yield ultimate toxin that interacts with the target cell. So whatever the chemical is there, that does not cause any chemical injury. Once it gets metabolized in the liver, it releases some active metabolite. That active metabolite causes the cell injury. So that is conversion of reactive toxic to reactive toxic metabolites. Example, cell injury by conversion of reactive metabolites is toxic liver necrosis caused by carbon tetrachloride. So carbon tetrachloride, what does it do? It produces cell injury by conversion to CCl3, that is carbon trichloride in the body, by the enzyme P450, which is present in the liver cells. So carbon tetrachloride is not harmful, or it does not cause any cell injury. When it gets metabolized and converted into carbon trichloride, it causes the cell injury. So here it is, this active metabolite is the causing agent. So thus it produces profound liver cell injury by free radical generation. As this conversion is taking place in the liver, whatever the carbon trichloride is released, it causes damage of liver cells. Clear? This is how the pathogens of chemical injury. Then coming to ionizing radiations, as I already said that water, when it undergoes radiolysis, it releases hydroxide. So hydroxide radical. So it causes it affects on proliferating cells and causes DNA damage. In DNA damage, it causes genetic damage, thereby it leads to mutations. Or if in the DNA damage, if it undergoes inhibition of DNA replication, it causes apoptosis, that means cell death. Or in case of non-proliferating cells like neurons, it causes lipid peroxidation, cell membrane damage, and necrosis. Clear? In case of ionizing radiations, water, when it undergoes radiolysis, it divides into, produces hydroxyl free radical. So the effect of hydroxyl free radical in two types of cells we are studying. In case of proliferating cells, it causes DNA damage. So the DNA damage, again, it is of two types. If the DNA due to DNA damage, if there is genetic damage, it leads to mutations. Or if it inhibits the DNA replication, there will be apoptosis. That means cell death and no further growth will be there. And in case of non-proliferating cells, what are the non-proliferating cells? Neurons. Once they are damaged, they cannot be replaced or repaired. So how does it affect? In that condition, it causes lipid peroxidation, cell membrane damage, and causes necrosis of the cell. This is the pathogenesis of ionizing radiations. Clear with it? So we have studied all these mechanisms. In the first slide, we have studied about pathogenesis of ischemic hypoxic injury. In that, we studied two types, the reversible and irreversible cell injury, and then pathogenesis of ischemic reperfusion injury, and pathogenesis of chemical injury, and pathogenesis of ionizing radiations. Clear with it? If you have any doubts, you can feel free to ask me. And if you want any corrections in my teaching, you can ask, you can inform me. Clear? Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone understood the topic. Thank you.